Hello, hello, everyone. Today is Tuesday, March 31st, 2020. Is a new edition of the SIG Release Engineering Subproject meeting. This is a meeting that is recorded and available on the internet, so please be mindful of what you say and do. Please be sure to adhere to the Kubernetes Code of Conduct, and in general, just be awesome people. So as I mentioned before we started recording, we've got a light agenda, but I want to let people know some of the things that are coming up in the next few days. The first thing I should say, since he is on the call, is we've got a new promotion. I was chatting with Tim yesterday. I've been thinking about it for a little bit. So Dan is going to be promoted to a branch manager, starting with a new cycle. Dan has been doing some really, really awesome work, and I think at this point it's a detriment to us to not have him have access to the release engineering tools and being able to cut releases. So he's going to be helping out Carlos and Sasha in that aspect, and I think they've been gelling pretty nicely as a team already. So we're going to keep that rolling for 119.
Thanks, Steven.
Yeah. So a question that I got on Slack related to release managers. If you are currently today a release manager associate, the job doesn't end. Right, the job does not end for the difference. There's a very big difference between the release managers group and the release team. Right, the release managers group is a group that exists for all of time, or for as long as you want to do the role. Right, there's no rotation from quarter to quarter. As long as you're doing a good job and actually active, you will continue in that role. So there's that. So. Speaking of release manager group stuff, this cycle we're going to have some updates to the handbooks as we do. And I think one of the things that I really want people to focus on is this idea of the fact that we're a ladder, right? We're building a ladder, which implies that we need to help people move through the ladder. By mentoring them, by allowing them to take on tasks that we may normally take on. But to expand that pool, we need to bring in new people. So we have a few release manager associates today, and we want to bring the release manager associates eventually into that branch manager role, and the branch managers eventually into that patch release team role. The biggest thing I would like to see is that mentorship aspect. I'm seeing a lot of technical execution, which is great, but that technical execution needs to also be paired with mentorship, right? Because that's the only way we strengthen this ladder. So yeah, that's a general note. I'm going to send out a longer email about engagement in general on the release managers group, and that should have a whole bunch of fun details there. I will be considering, if you have been part of the release team in the past, if you're on the release team that just finished for 118, if you have general interest in becoming a release manager associate, you can reach out to myself via DM. I'm going to be sending a note to the release team as well. I think I would like to seed the group with maybe a few more people and try to work on moving them through the ladder. I think it's really important for us to get a good melange of people who can kind of do this follow the sun rotation, right, when we're doing releases. So our releases are something that's not particularly difficult. It's more so timing, right? So if you depending on where you are, you want to start it at a certain time and maybe execute the entire release yourself, or be able to put it in a place where you can hand it off to someone in another time zone, right? So to be able to do that handoff, we do need to have more people available to pick up the load as we move through. For the branch managers, we mentioned in the private chat that so Dan, you'll get access to the private chat, and you'll get new awesome permissions soon. But I noticed in the private chat that we were talking about scrubbing the cherry pick sheets. If there's anything that the branch managers are confused about on the cherry pick sheets, please let us know. I think that's one of the things to look out for on those sheets is there's a little bit of nuance in approving cherry picks, right? It's like there's an increased level of like, is this a bug? Is this actually something that's critical that should be backported? Do we have a release note that's nice enough to actually describe what we're fixing? So like if there's any confusion, please let us know as you're looking at that stuff. Yeah. Any questions? Okay, so next up, I think what we'll do is, well, there are no new people on the call, so we'll skip the welcome new attendees. We'll do, let's go around the room and do some release manager updates. I will go by the people I see on my screen first. So, Sasha, you're up first.
Hey, so I'm right now working on some logic in conjunction to fine green build. I also have a pull request up here. And the idea is, and maybe you can tell me if this is the right idea, is to replace fine green build. So we have two functions in this release lib bash script. And one of them is set build version, which has, from my perspective, a high complexity. And I will put it into our
very very high complexity. Can you actually post that in the meeting notes? And anyone who would like the illustrious duty of working on the meeting notes, could you pop your name down as note taker? Yes. So fine green build is incredibly highly complex, which is why it's been there for so long. We do need to detangle it, and I saw that PR up a little earlier, so I'm going to take a look at it when I can.
Yeah.
What else have you been working on? I know you've been doing some other stuff too.
I mean, most of my other PRs got merged, which were related to refactorings in GCP Manager. And this is mostly all done from my point of view. And yeah, testing in conjunction to GCP Manager is also pretty good from my understanding. I also supported Carlos a little bit related to that. And I think we will have a little personal meeting later this week about this to tell him and show him how the testing works and how to implement new tests and what the general strategy behind all this code generation and mocking is.
Cool. If you end up having something, I would love to pop in. I'm generally interested in testing stuff, just to be on just to kind of fly on the wall.
Yeah. You can make it public. Sure.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you for that, Sasha. Next up on the list is Carlos.
Hey, I did like a pause after the 1.18 release to do some company work, but I guess tomorrow or Thursday I can start working back again on the SIG release stuff. I have one stuff I'm paused that is updating the release branch manager handbook to update to since we are using CREL right now as the command line tool, replace the old reference for the old tool for the new one. And I saw your comment about like pointing to the other documentation. That's the stuff I'm planning to do tomorrow. And also, as Sasha mentioned, like checking how to port the GCP code we have now for a package and make it more testable as well.
Awesome. So for that PR, basically, thank you for taking it up because it's something I plan to do and time.
No problem.
So the biggest thing is like now that we actually have a document for all of the or a set of docs for all of the different CREL tools, we want to make sure that we don't drift in our branch manager or our patch release. Because the way it works today is like there's some documentation about GCP manager, and then most of it is actually in the branch manager handbook, and then the patch release handbook references the branch manager handbook. So we want to decouple that stuff and point directly to the canonical docs. So thank you for taking that up.
Oh, no problem. And it will make it a little bit easier in the future when we need to update stuff that just have one place to update.
Exactly. So you also were working on it's a command for something non-interactive. So the question I had was, what's the intention there? Is it meant to be something that can initiate non-interactive runs of GCB or non-interactive runs of Anaga?
That no-interactive, it was like I was discussing with Sasha, and today in the branch fast forward, we have the same. It's meant only to be in the testing stuff to make it a little bit easier to test.
Okay.
It's not to use in a real life stuff.
So the general thought is if you make something available in the API, someone will find a way to use it. So I would prefer the reason that we have GCP managers, it's one supposed to provide the substitutions to Anago, right? That's its primary focus. But the second part, so that Anago can run in GCP, right? But the second part of it is so it's meant to be done manually, so that a release manager is the one doing it, right? So if we make it non-interactive, that kind of opens up this entirely different vector that we're not really planning for.
Okay.
So today Anago can run in a non-interactive mode, which is what it does, right? Running through GCP, there's a -- yes flag, right? So if we're working on the Anago portion, the Anago rewrite, that should the GCP manager should be able to pass that flag through to Anago.
Okay. Yeah,
right?
but that one is not the intention to pass to Anago. It's just to make the tests a little bit easier.
Right. Okay.
But
okay.
I think like maybe we can refactor the utils that make the ask and the questions.
Okay. Yeah.
We can mock that stuff and then make the test easier for that.
Yeah, for sure. So that is something that I toss together essentially. I like so if you're going to make it better, go for it. Totally go.
Okay. Cool.
All right. I guess. Do the release manager associates have things that they've been working on that they want to chat about? I see Marco, Jim, Taylor, Dan. See, Dan, you're mentally in my mind like two roles simultaneously. So Dan, what you wanna go through some of the stuff you've been working on too?
Sure. So I have also been busy with some end of release stuff and then some work stuff. But one thing that I definitely need to get back to, and I'm hoping to at the end of this week, is push build, because I got like 95% of the way there and then it's just stalled. So hopefully I can get back to working on that. Otherwise, getting up to speed a little bit more on the branch manager handbook and that sort of thing. And yeah,
Cool.
that's pretty much
So
it.
do you want to? Is there a PR up for CREL push already?
There's not an open one. There's been work merged already for it. And let me take a look. I haven't jumped back in it in a little bit. but
because like we're not going to immediately do the switch over, right? So it might be a thing that could be good to just push, just put a PR somewhere, so that at least while you're doing other stuff, people can review it.
Cool. Yeah, it looks like at the end of curl push right now, there's a few to-dos, which are basically, looks like just preparing the binaries and pushing some images. So doesn't look like there's too much left there, but hopefully I can get something open, like you said, for review.
Okay. And so I was thinking about push recently, and how are we, so one of the questions I have is how are we going to weave it into the current process?
That's a great question. And I do not know the answer at the moment. But so from what I understand, push build runs as part of, let's see, which test is it on here? All right, is it a post submit?
It's a few different things, right? So the pull cluster up that runs in our repo, I think, does a push build at the end. The build CI Kubernetes build will do a push build, and then CI Kubernetes builds all of its variants, right? So all the variants across the different branches will do a push build as well. So just be aware that the tool that we build has to be able to slot into that
Each of those
space, right? Yeah.
Gotcha.
Cool. Well, all right. Marco, Jim, or Taylor, if y'all have been working on anything and want to chat about it.
Yeah, I'd say it's a 119 lately. First off, howdy everybody. Sorry, it's Tuesday. We're making it through this week. 119 has been my world and my focus. Did a lot of reading and just tracking of PRs over the weekend. Feeling good about the retro that's coming up. Excited to jump on that. Nothing too big beyond that. Have started to look at calendars and dates and kind of start to work through that and do some planning. More on that will come out this week, and I'm gonna be hitting up GitHub about getting the release team all formed up. But aside from that, nothing too crazy. We're starting a party. It's called 119.
You're all invited. That's awesome. That's awesome, and congrats again on being selected as a release team lead. I think you're going to do an awesome job. Jim, do you want to chat a little bit about the docs release improvement stuff?
Yeah, sure. Sorry if I break up a little bit. My internet's kind of flaky. But I really wanted to raise awareness over this issue I opened up in the Kubernetes release area. Just making sure I didn't lose everybody. Everyone's like frozen on my screen. I'm not sure if it's just I have terrible internet or if y'all are seeing the same thing. But if you can hear me, it's all good. I'll keep rolling. But
yeah, you're good.
All right, cool. So essentially, I opened up that issue to track more of a larger problem that involves release engineering. It revolves around the release process. In 119, I'm going to attempt to tackle some of these challenges and also some changes in the overall docs implementation strategy, how we're actually merging docs, how we're dealing with branches, and hopefully the end goal is to implement some sort of KREL solution around this. So the idea is to remove all of the human error that we've been seeing in the past releases for 117 and 118 and make it a little bit more of a automated approach for docs and allow the docs team to focus on purely what we do best, reviewing PRs, making sure the content's there, tracking enhancements, and moving some of this Git rotation, branching strategies into more automation tooling there. So check out the issue. If there's any questions or comments, I'd be happy to answer those.
Cool. So I did just assign you to it. So one of the things I know we changed recently was the merge method, right? Oh wait, it was not changed yet. It was
Yes, so we didn't merge that yet. What we wanted to do is get documentation in place for how to squash a PR. The essentials around the process that we're changing. And then once that's in place, we're going to make that tweak. We were waiting for the 118 release to go out the door, which it has successfully. And then now we're working on some documentation around squashing PRs for docs and training some of our folks. And then that should merge, I'd imagine, in the next week or so.
Okay, cool. Now, one note on the documentation for squashing, if that goes anywhere, it should definitely go in the contributor guide. It's something that's generally useful, and I don't think I don't think everyone knows how to do it. So.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we have some duplication efforts that Celeste on SigDocs is working on cleaning up between the contributors guide as well as start contributing in k8s.io.
Mm-hmm.
And so it most likely would land in both places, but we'd make sure that, that it's updated in both areas.
Yeah, I would say like link out, right? Link out to the contributor guide where you can, because it happens a lot. It happens a lot across all repos, but it's a style thing. Like everyone has a slightly different Git workflow. So depending on when you do or don't do it. Also, if you pull in suggestions during PRs and you don't batch them, there are different implications for like each style. So like if you want, tag me on that PR once it goes up, and I'll take a look too.
Awesome, will do.
Cool, awesome, thank you. All right, I guess I will go. So I've been doing stuff and things and all that good stuff. We are moving into 119. We are also moving into a big change called VDF, right? So VDF is our vanity domain flip, and the vanity domain is kates.gcr.io, right? So I'm going to show you stuff. I'm going to show you a PR. Let's see. Oh, it was already up. Silly me. Okay, so there's a PR open right now that is essentially on hold. It does a few things, so essentially what we have to do is now that we are moving to, so the background is the current GCR that we use today, kates.gcr.io, that is a vanity domain for gcr.io/Google containers, right? So Google Containers is part of a GCP project that is owned by Google. And as we've been moving through the last year and change with Kate's Infra, the Kate's Infra working group working on providing guidance for how to do image promotion, and we've seen different SIGs and sub projects start to sign up for doing image promotion. Those images are moving to a new place, right? Those images are basically being promoted from a staging repository, right, to a production repository, which you can see here. So we have various configurations in the kates.io repo. We also have, and I think I've shown some of this before on a call, but so there's a groups.yaml, which is pretty cool because you can do configuration for various ACLs by YAML config. We all love the YAML, right? But also we've got kates.gcr.io, and then within it, images and manifests, right? So an example of a manifest, let's do one for SIG release, right? So build image, we have a promoter manifest, right? Which basically says, I've got a few different names. I'm going to bind the Kate's Infra Staging Build Image group is the group that has IAM privileges over this GCP project. and the registries that it attaches to is this is the essentially like a GSLB for the registry, which hits US EU Asia.gcrio /Kate's artifacts prod /build image, right? So basically, if you drop the us.gcrio Kate's artifacts prod and replace that with kates.gcr.io, so the images would be located in kates.gcr.io /build image / whatever the name of the image is, :tag, right? So what we're doing is moving the old images, right? And if you want to see what this promoter manifest looks like, basically we're defining the name of the image, and then this map is a reference from the digest of the image, right, to a tag, right, for the image, right? So this file in particular is sorted by digest, right, as opposed to tags, which is why you're seeing they're a little out of order. But we do this because we have a tool called that is part of the container image promoter that allows you to snapshot things, and the snapshot happens. Let's see if I can show you actually. This one. Nope, not that one. But essentially, so we have a tool that outputs these as ordered by digest, right? So I wanted to make sure that those were in the same order. But essentially, if you run this command and you have sig.kates.io Kate's container image promoter, you can output a file that looks exactly like that. Right, so moving forward, release managers will need to do that, and I'm going to write up a process for it. It's essentially running this command until we have a tool that does it. So going back to that PR, essentially what the PR does is we're stepping through it by commit, actually, right? So the first thing we want to do is skip the ACL check on the production registry, right? The new production registry is, so the way Anago works today is it runs in one place and has access, rather the GCB service account that runs the GCB jobs for staging and release has access to write to both the staging GCS buckets as well as the production GCS buckets, right? So we're kind of like breaking that. So GCR, Google Container Registries, are backed by GCS or Google Cloud Storage, right? And so basically the way that we get images into staging our production is we write to that bucket, right? So to make sure that this works, we kind of have to split that or break that assumption, because we won't be able to write directly to the production bucket, which is good, right? So the first thing we do here is we skip the ACL check on the production registry, right? And this cleans up a lot of the logic that's involved in that. But basically, Anago will do a pre-flight check, right? And the logic is really here. That will look at all of the container registries, right? So it'll grab, if you run as a user and you specify that user and you specify a separate bucket, which is something that we don't really do, it will take that bucket as well as the default staging bucket as well as the production bucket, and it'll, during the first steps of Anago, it will see if you have write access to those buckets by writing a file and then deleting it, right? So we remove the we're actually removing the container registry, removing this array, and just replacing that with a GCR/IO path, right? So you can see instead of doing this loop for registries, we're just saying if it's the registry, just replace, just replace anything anything that might be an underscore with a hyphen, and then get on with your day, right? So it'll only do it. So, and we've also got this conditional here that says if you're in no mock mode, we're going to skip the ACL check on the prod path, right? So yeah, that's the first piece of it. The next piece is we're going to skip image pushes in no mock mode as well, right? So this just adds logic here to, if we look right here, the Docker release, the release Docker release, great function name. Release Docker release is actually doing the release of the images, and it's a short enough function that you can go take a look at that if you want to. That's in lib release lib.sh in the release repo. So we're making this a conditional, and we're basically saying if we're not in no mock mode, do the release, right? And then afterwards, we're just adding a to-do here to add image manifest validation, right? And saying that, hey, when we get back to this, maybe we'll consider renaming that function and consolidating some of the logic. But just for now, we're going to validate the image manifests and let you know that there's actually a to-do in here because this is currently a no-op, right? So this is just like testing phase. I'm just walking you kind of through my process for testing out some of this stuff, because essentially it needs to be tested in a place where we can test without actually flipping it on. So I've been doing some things in the background to allow that. And if you check out the details of this PR, you can see. So one, the vanity domain flip issue, which is issue 270. Right here, and the PR itself is right here. If you want to check it out, and it should link back to various places. But this is kind of a tangled thing that is related to establishing our stage and release process on Kate's infra, and you can see there's been quite a bit of work that's happened over the last since a little bit before October. But this is like essentially our first execution of moving a thing, right? So you check that out too. All right, back to the review. Any questions so far? This won't move. Okay, cool. All right, so we're skipping the image pushes, and then in the next one, we are basically setting the test project to, so we're removing that test project variable. We're not removing it, but we're, this is part of what I was talking about, right? We're pointing to the new staging project on Kate's infra for the Kubernetes release process, right? The staging and release process. So we're pointing it directly there instead of referencing the Kubernetes release test project. So the reason for this is because of a domain access restriction policy within GCP. We can't use this new project, Kate Staging Kubernetes, to write into the buckets on the old projects, right? So we need to use the old project to write, and this is because like dl.kates.io, right, which is essentially the redirect for the gs/Kubernetes release bucket, is currently on Google Infra. So until we have a plan for GCS promotion and a plan to cut it over, the same as we have for the container registry right now, we can't really move forward with moving the projects entirely over. So initially, this PR was kind of, there's a separate PR that is smaller now because this PR was essentially spliced off of it, right? So, so this one, if you want to check out, was kind of like the original PR, and I've been cutting things out of it. One more, and this is on kind of a feature branch, right? So this occasionally gets rebased, or I've been doing rebases, although I should really be doing merges, but I'm trying to keep it clean since it's been open for a while. So, okay, great. So we're going to skip the image pushes, and then we're going to set a different project here. So we're kind of in a split brain mode where we're still writing the artifacts like tarballs and what have you to the old project, and then writing the container images into the new project, right? And then in between running the staging process, Release Manager will need to go and do an image promotion, because the next step will do a validation of that image promotion. So if you read the commit message, essentially what's happening is we've created a new function called validate remote manifests. And Sasha, this is kind of why I put Scopio into the image so that we could leverage this. We do a little minor cleanup. We use Scopio inspect to retrieve the image manifest remotely. And then we kind of loop through the architectures and check for the architecture specific digest within the manifests using JQ. So the reason it pretty closely resembles the release Docker release function, and could be consolidated, but I decided not to do that here because we know release Docker release works today, and we're adding new functionality, but we're also adding new functionality at a critical time where we're actually doing an infrastructure cutover. So I don't want to introduce too many things to that equation. This is something that can easily be refactored later. It's just something that I don't think we should take on now. So where that to do was before, we replaced with Docker, release Docker, validate remote manifests, and you can see that it takes the same arguments as release Docker release, right? And then going into this, we add some more to-dos to remind us to remove things once the vanity domain flip is actually successful. We cleaned up some of the for loop population here with a find instead of a CD echo. This is a little bit more guaranteed to give us what we want, right? So we're basically looking for a file only within that current directory, and we want to strip off the file path, right? And just have the base name of the file. So release Docker release, we had an opportunity to clean up some of these local variables because they're no longer required, as long as some of the local, as well as some of the local arrays. We actually validate the amount of arguments that come into the function now. And you see that same pattern is repeated for the architectures, min, max, step 1. This time we're looking for a type directory because all of the directories are named by all the subdirectories in this directory are named by architecture, right? So we're grabbing all the architecture names, and then we're looping through that, and then we're looping through the tars that are within those directories. And then you can see that for validate, so the minor changes really to the Docker release, the release Docker release function, but you can see that the Docker validate manifests function is pretty similar. Basically because I wanted to get this logic out, but again, this is something that we can conditionalize within Docker release Docker and change it, or release Docker release. Such a lovely function name. Okay, so here, this time we're going through the list of manifest images, and we're going to validate one by one. Basically, we're doing we're setting the manifest equal to Scopio inspect, the image, the version, and let's get the raw, right? So this is actually the manifest list for that image. And then from the manifest list, we're looking at we're setting digest, and this is taking the list and doing some JQ magic, right, to pull the manifests, and then select by platform and architecture, right? So this is where the architecture field would be, and then if that's good, right, then we're going to pull out the digest from that architecture, right? If that exists, then we'll pull out the digest from that architecture, right? And if that result is not empty, then we're going to display what the digest is. Otherwise, we're going to say that we can't find it, right? And that is that for that PR. But if you want to see what it looks like, the results of that is essentially this, right? So when it works, we get something like this, right? So this is release Docker release, and I'll make it just a little bigger so that's easier to see, right? So it's doing a bucket-to-bucket copy, staging, doing the staged images, staged Docker images from this lovely path, doing some pushes, and then creating the manifest image list and annotating each of the various architectures, right, to that list, and then we're pushing the manifest list, and then we do the same for each of Kube Controller Manager, Kube Scheduler, API Server, Conformance, Kube Proxy, right? And then after that, we've got our new validate remote manifests, which goes in and it says, I'm looking for this image. I'm going to check the digests against each of the architectures, and then I want to know what the digest is, just for the sake of, like, one, this is useful to validate once we start doing the image promotion to see if the digest that we supposedly pushed is the same one that we're promoting, right? So I think the next evolution of this will have, we'll probably dump we'll dump the promoter manifest somewhere, so that someone can just pick that up and then PR that to Kate's, the Kubernetes Kates.io repo. There's also, I opened an issue for a tool that we could write afterwards to kind of, that would essentially merge the two manifests. So we'd merge an existing manifest with the new results, right? So that way we'd have, it's a little more frictionless, trying to having a tool that will automatically merge YAML for you, right? As opposed to having to go, okay, well, I'm looking for 119 alpha 2. Okay, for API server, did I catch them all, right? So the reason that we put the validation, yes, Sasha, we can. So the reason that we put the validation in the stage in the mock process is that we want to make sure that, like, one, we want to be able to test it, right? Because we currently, so we want to validate that the images actually made it to the staging area, and two, we can't easily validate that they made it to the production area, because we would essentially be doing a release. I could add more conditionals to the file, but we would be doing a release, and we kind of can't do that just yet. So tomorrow, it happened so quickly. All right, tomorrow is April 1st, and we're actually doing it. It's not an April Fool's joke. we'll be cutting over the Kate's GCR.io repository. Linus on the Google side, he's also one of our build admins, works on the devs and RVMs, has been working on backfilling the images. So all of the images, all of the versions, all of the things that have ever been in Kates.gcr.io have been backfilled into Kate's artifacts prod, right? That our new registry, right? So basically, we're making sure that there's no service interruption when we do this cutover. We're going to freeze the old registry Google containers right before we do this. We're going to give, we should probably freeze it today, actually. I'm going to talk to him after this. But basically, we'll give it give it a little bit to make sure that no new images come into that registry, right? And then we'll do the cutover. Right? And after the cutover happens, I think what I'll do is I'll do another 119 alpha, right? So that'll give us an opportunity to go through the entire workflow. We'll merge this PR first, and then do the alpha, right? So that'll give us an opportunity, and it'll also give me an opportunity to kind of like see what the user experience is and write up some docs on how to do image promotion within this, right? Yeah, and especially if none of the release managers have touched the image promotion process before, it'll be good to have a walkthrough on that. So any questions about that? All right, cool. All right, so I would say, I feel like there's one more thing I have to mention. No, okay, yeah, it was dance promotion. We did that already. Okay, so for people who are interested in getting involved in the release engineering stuff, the first thing I can tell you, Go updates, Marky, awesome. Yes, why not? So we have, I'll share my screen again. So we've been working on in the background, come on, yes. All right. Golang updates, and there have been quite a few. So there's a lot to do when you do a Golang update, and I would say that the 113.8 updates were a little easier than usual. Hey, Cat. The 119 ones were also fairly painless. The 14.1, the 114.1 ones are the ones that are going to be a little tricky. So basically this issue, Marky, is just about ready to close. This merged. Yep. So that is done. So the one thing that remains is, I mean, this is going to get punted, removing Bazel, but is actually documenting it, right? So for a while, we've basically had this process that, maybe 5 people knew how to do. I want to make sure that we turn, we hand that over to the release engineering group and give them an opportunity to do this as well, right? One of the bigger things was doing the Go updates was essentially contingent on having a Googler around, because we needed to publish the new KubeCross image, and the KubeCross image was one of those images that lived on a Google registry, right? So one of the things that we did was we moved KubeCross over to if you want to check out here, and that should link over to a few different issues, but yeah, okay. Begin building, storing KubeCross images on Kate's infra, right? So 1133 and then 88562 on the Kubernetes side. We'll show you how to do that. So the last piece before we close this one out is for me to actually document the steps to go through. So the second one is, so really quick on the steps, it's essentially you need to do a KubeCross bump now that KubeCross lives in K release. So it's it's images, build, cross, and then the make file and the Docker file are there as well. So version file, right? So you bump the version file, you bump the version within the Docker file, and then you send it for build. The build will trigger when you merge a PR that changes anything within images, build, cross. Then eventually you'll have a new cube cross image. From there, you can open the image promotion PR, which touches those files that I was talking about before, right? So you can see that this is broken into 2 commits, right? The promote commit is pretty simple, right? We're just adding a new digest in here, but this is also just sorted by digest so that when we start using the snapshot tool, the diffs are easier to read, right? So it's a promotion, and then after the promotion, there is the actual bump within KK, which has gotten a little simpler. We're basically bumping a number within the cube cross version. Sorry, there is something in the background. And then changing the dependencies.yaml file and some Bazel stuff, which is why Bazel is connected to the discussion of removing Bazel is connected to this. Is this did not work until we got a clue from Jeff about how to fix it. So essentially, our Bazel version in Kubernetes is old, and trying to update to 1.13.9 was not allowed by the new version of rules.go, or rather, yes, the new version of rules.go, which supported Go 1.13.9, needed a certain version of Bazel. So that's being worked on in the background as well, the updates to Bazel 2.2.0. Yeah. So after that, then there is a variance bump. So the variants are basically a file for the GCB builder that controls the images that we get. So if you have looked at TestInfra and you've seen the Kubikins EDE dash, colon SHA dash master, right? That spec is basically here, right? It's saying that we're going to, the config is going to be called master. We're going to use this version of Go. This Kate's release, so this is the version marker for the Kate's release, the Bazel version, the old Bazel version, right? And so on and so forth. So we want to make sure that we bump all of these files so that in CI, we're starting to use the new Go version as well, right? And finally, just a maintenance update for the publishing bot. And you can see that this is just a lot of search and replace stuff, right? We're going to say that, we're at 1.12.12. We want to go to 1.12.17. And then for 1.13.4, we're going to 1.13. So this is just a bunch of search and replaces on these files. And so that's kind of a walkthrough of the new process. And this is assuming that, so if we look at 1.14.1, we can see that it's going a little not as smoothly, I guess, is the nicest way to put it. So basically there are some mlock issues with certain kernels for Go 1.14. So 1.14.0 is, I think, a non-starter for us. So we're looking at 1.14.1, but I actually think that we're going to be looking at 1.14.2. There are changes to, there were race conditions discovered, I think, for etcd and bbolt specifically. So there is a change that needs to happen in bbolt, which I think did, but was not fully, was not tested in a cross-compilation environment. So that might need to be redone. And there's more. There's more. The 1.14.1 is a bit of an onion. So Marky, this is kind of why. So there are also scalability failures. 1.14.1 looks like it was causing the kubelets to get wedged on certain nodes. So scalability is also looking into this right now. The Go team is also on this issue. So Marky, the reason I didn't have updates is that this is has become fairly involved. So I think we're going to end up waiting for, I hope to update that by the end of the week. Just at least a general note about what direction we're going in. And I think we're probably going to be looking at going for 1.14.2, assuming all of the right pieces are in place. I also want to make sure that etcd is updated on Kubernetes, because we need to pull in the new, that new bvault version. So a few things to do there, but we'll get it all done. I think we had, my initial thought was like, let's do this now because we're, it's in between 2 cycles and it'll be a good time to do it. But we're going to probably be held up until the next Go release. So, all right. Yeah. So for people who are generally interested in working on the release engineering issues, we're going to be working on pruning some of the backlog. But in the meantime, and if you're interested and you're trying to figure out what to work on, search for our good first issues, search for our help wanted issues, search for issues that do not have assignees, right? Just a note that we're working through a massive backlog, working through a backlog that has generated, over multiple years in Kubernetes, right? So please be patient with us if you're looking for things to work on. If you're wondering why your thing isn't solved just yet, we're trying to take the biggest issues right now. So for me, biggest issues are things that cause Kubernetes to not be able to be releasable, and things that are moving towards helping unlock some path for people to move to new infrastructure, right? So if it's supporting a process that's ripping something out of Google infrastructure and putting it on Kate's infrastructure, then that's part of where my priority lies too, in terms of deciding what we do for the cycle. One of the things that we're also going to be talking about, and I know we're at time, just about at time, but one of the things we're going to be talking about doing is the kubeadm out of tree work, which implies that we're going to be doing some work around our branching and tagging strategies for KK for Kubernetes release. So stay tuned for that stuff. If you have not had a chance to see, to take a look at the kubeadm out of tree cap, please take a look at that. I will pop it in the chat. Because that kept pretty deeply involves release engineering. So, okay, computer's moving slow. And Dan, if you want to pop these into the notes as well. Yes, so I think that's it. Any questions before we head off? Oh, all right. Thank you, everyone, as always, for hanging out with us. We will catch you at the next one. Later.
Thanks, everybody. Later.
Thanks. See ya.